While in prison, I convinced the woman of my dreams to marry me. For some, it's hard to fathom. Seems impossible how two people can fall in love while one is confined and the other not, to the point that they decide to get married. I have to mention this because, as much as this is a story about how prison impacts mental health, this is also a love story, a real story, a transparent story, a story full of ups and downs, a story of survival, a story of how two people managed to survive something that was set out and created to destroy them. You see, it wasn't just me impacted by prison, it was my wife, it was my family, it was those that stood by my side and those that would stand by my side after. Because let's be clear, everybody didn't. So, yeah, some real moments to say the least. I remember talking to my therapist one time and saying to them, man, I feel so blessed that I met my wife when I did. But at the same time, there's a certain guilt that I carry that she met me when she did. For me, she was a beacon of light, somebody that rescued me, essentially, at least showed me the direction out of the darkness. She was my lighthouse, if you will. But man, I brought the darkness in. I don't know where to start exactly, but I guess I can begin at that phone call that I had just a few weeks prior to me coming home, few weeks prior to me coming into the world again for a second chance. And keep in mind, I had been incarcerated since the age of 19 years old, gone for 16 years, 11 months. Society had changed, people, technology, everything. And I remember in the midst of this, me being someone that somehow became good at prison, telling my wife, I'm not worried about what goes on out there. Those problems you talking about, they're not real. You tripping. What I faced in here is real. And once I get home, I'm good. I know I am. And her, out of love, as my wife, all 4'9" of her, saying back to me in the way that she does, you're tripping. You got to tighten up, baby. You have no idea what you're about to face. Now, I got to admit, sitting in the inside of prison walls, surviving over 16 years, and speaking to my wife at the time, I had this entirely just corrupt misconception, first and foremost, of what a man was. Let's be clear, I had no opportunity or experience in life to actually live as a free man. I got locked up as 19. I was a teenager. No life experience, no opportunity to mature, especially when it comes to relationships. And when I was frustrated, I often would let her know through tone of speech. More, I'd hang up the phone at times if she began to get me too frustrated. And this conversation had me flustered, but I remember trying to stay focused on the fact that I was getting ready to go home. But in the midst of that, my frustration and trying to convince her, I'm gonna be all right, I'm gonna be good. You tripping. I don't want to keep hearing about that. What we gonna get into that first day that I get home? There was so much pressure on me that I was trying to avoid. Maybe some of it I was unaware. And soon enough, that day came when it was time for me to walk out of prison gates. And I remember the night before not being able to sleep, being so excited to the point that I paced up and down the entire night in that dorm, took a shower at 3 in the morning, and sat in my chair straight up waiting for count time because I knew once they called that, it was time for me to get transferred to the big prison so I could get into my clothes and walk out of prison gates forever. I was ready. And that morning, I walked over there. And I went to that big prison with the guards and I put my clothes on for the first time that my family had dropped off to put on my body. For the first time as a free man, clothes was a totally surreal experience. I had forgot how much of an alien I had become to the world. I hadn't wore street clothes or jeans with pockets in the proper place for over 16 years. It's a whole nother story. If you've done time, you know exactly what I'm saying. So here I go, excited, looking in the mirror, but at the same time, full of so much anxiety and fear. Why? Because I was blessed. I was going home to a wife and a mortgage, which meant I didn't have the stress of trying to find a place to live like most people that come home from incarceration. But being that I was blessed with what I was blessed with, it was still a pressure and a weight that I was not ready for. Going back, before I could really get into the story, if I admit it, I might not have got married before I came home. I may have took the time to try to figure out if I was even good to function in society. Day one. I would understand relatively quickly the moment I walked out of prison gates, and the videos posted on my page somewhere almost instantly how jacked up I was. I remember my family being full of rejoice. So freaking happy. My wife, my cousin, my uncle, my mother, they're crying tears of joy, and I'm numb. That's how my face looked as they were excited. You could hear it in their voice, and all I could say was, "Yeah, let's go. I'm ready." Watch the video. I was numb. I was a shell of myself. I was returning from that place called prison, which reflects war. I had PTSD, prison traumatic stress disorder, post traumatic stress disorder, whatever you want to call it. It was deeply embedded in me, along with a few other things that I didn't really know about that were dormant, at least I thought so, until I was outside of that environment. I embraced my family. I got in the car, and instantly, as I should have been happy, I was full of sweat. And it was January. Why? Because my wife had put a phone in my hand and she was happy. She wasn't as aware of the opportunity or situation or circumstances. Maybe I wish she would have been. I didn't want to take the time to tell her, not right now, it's a little too much. I didn't want to ruin their mood. I wanted them to at least be happy, though I was full of fear and more. When she gave me my phone, immediately was anxiety. I hadn't touched the phone for so long. And when I got locked up in 2003, it was the Nextel chirp. Social media didn't even exist like that. Smartphones? No. And here I go. My phone's ringing like crazy. She had given my numbers out to people. People that had left and abandoned me for 17 years were reaching out. And I tried to be happy in the moment, but I was so confused and conflicted. And then I was getting on social media and I was trying to find people for some reason in that car on the way while I should have been more observant of the world. I was trying to just connect to the madness looking back at it now. I didn't even understand social media fully. And I was immersed within the first 20 minutes before we even got to our first stop. So, yeah, that was the first few minutes. And that would be the setup of an anxiety filled day. Day one, the day when I should be happy, full of joy and excitement. But oh no, that was just the beginning.